Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to start with this new topic, cranial nerve nuclei, right? Cranial nerve nuclei and the functional columns, the arrangement of gray matter within the brain stem. So, all of you stay focused, keep listening, be attentive. It's an important topic. This topic is the basics for understanding the cranial nerves and their functions. Before this, we have completed all about the spinal cord, right? So, before moving to the brain stem, now we are ascending up, right? We started with the general aspects of neuroanatomy, the types of cell cellular architecture, CSF, meninges, then the spinal cord, cranial, spinal nuclei, spinal nerves. We have done with that. The ascending and descending tracks also has been covered. Now, can you think before like moving to the brain stem above, spinal cord ascends up to join the brain stem, and from caudal to rostral, you have medulla, then you have pons, and above you have the midbrain, and midbrain with the help of two cerebral peduncles, it is connected to the two cerebral hemispheres. So that is how from below we'll ascend up from caudal to rostral. Okay. And the cerebellum, it is attached to the brainstem with the help of three paired peduncles, superior, middle, and inferior cerebral peduncle, and it is attached to the midbrain, pons, and medulla on the dorsal side. So, let me ask you about the arrangement of spinal nerve nuclei. So, remember, if this gray matter in the spinal cord was compacted and it was surrounding the central canal in nearly a butterfly shaped manner. So, what were the functional columns? If I'll tell you how these nerves and their functional columns are named. Remember, there were two horns. There was a dorsal and a ventral horn in the spinal cord, and the dorsal horn, is the sensory horn. That means it was receiving sensations, all sort of sensory information from the body, means the body wall, you know exteroceptive sensations, proprioceptive sensations, they were all entering from the dorsal horn. And the nuclei there was substantia gelatinosa for pain, proprius for touch pressure, crude touch pressure, vibration. Then there was dorsal column for unconscious proprioceptive sensations from the muscle tendons, spindle, Golgi muscle spindle, Golgi organ, and all. So it was this dorsal horn, which is now, which can be called as general somatic afferent. Got it? So the nuclei of spinal nerves, which receive in sensory information from the body, that means soma. Body is soma, which develops from somites. See? Somites actually develop the skeletal muscles also. So information from the peripheral receptors, exteroceptors, proprioceptive receptors, and information from the muscles and their sensory receptors from the skeletal muscles, they all are entering into the dorsal horn. So the dorsal horn nuclei in then then the ventral horn. The ventral horn is the efferent pathway, the motor output. So the remember the arrangement of nuclei in the anterior horn, they were categorized into medial group, lateral group, and a central group. Out of these, the lateral group was present only in the cervical, and lumbar swellings for the nerves to supply the upper and lower limbs. So the lateral group was divided into anterolateral, posterolateral, posterior posterolateral to supply the muscles, and the arrangement was proximal to distal, anterior to posterior. Okay. The anterolateral nucleus was innervating the muscles of the proximal region of the limbs. Posterolateral was innervating the muscles of the arms, forearms, and in the legs in the lower limb. However, the posterior posterolateral was innervating the muscles of the palm and soles. That was about the lateral group of nucleus in the anterior horn. Then the medial group was again into anteromedial and posteromedial, and they were innervating the muscles of the axial skeleton. So this group of nucleus was present in the entire length of the spinal cord. And there was central group of nucleus, which included nucleus of spinal accessory nerve, nucleus of phrenic nerve, and also nucleus for spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve, which descends up to only first and second cervical segments. So the central group of nucleus will also not be seen in the entire length of the spinal cord. What efferent nucleus we will find in the entire length was the medial group of nucleus. And this medial group of nucleus was categorized at lamina 8, right? So lamina 9 was for the lateral group of nucleus. 10th lamina was surrounding the central canal. And the central canal was, the gray matter surrounding the central canal was having, commissural fibers, as well as the glial cells, the microglial cells, astrocytes, as well as the type 2 Golgi cells. These are the other cells which you find in the gray matter. So the nuclei embedded in the anterior horn of the spinal cord that are categorized as general somatic efferent nuclei. So you've got to know about two functional columns in the spinal cord, which was receiving information, and the other one was innervating, giving efferents to these muscles. So it actually is a reflex arc. An arc is formed, right? Spinal arc, Information from the soma is received at the dorsal horn, and accordingly, the effector, the motor neuron, provides the action through the anterior horn, and that's why the anterior horn is called general somatic efferent. Then in case of thoracolumbar outflow, that is the autonomic sympathetic outflow, and in case of S2, S3, S4, it is the parasympathetic outflow. So the lateral horn of the spinal cord, there you have two more functional columns. As you know, it receives visceral, and this is the visceral column, because autonomic control is for the viscera, blood vessels, glands, smooth muscles of the GIT, heart, and then lungs. These cardiac muscles, smooth muscles are innervated by autonomic nervous system. So this autonomic column is called the visceral column. And in this also there are visceral afferent, general visceral afferent, and general visceral efferent. So general visceral afferent and general visceral efferent, they both will be found in the lateral column. So the general visceral afferents, they will be coming, and they will be reaching there from the higher centers as well as from the viscera. So that column is called general visceral afferent in the lateral column of the spinal cord. And then from there, the preganglionic autonomic fibers will arise from the lateral horn and will emerge out through the ventral nerve roots. So the column of preganglionic fibers is called general visceral efferent. So you have four functional columns in the spinal cord. which makes, and actually there are two arcs. One is general somatic afferent, which connects to the general somatic efferent, and then is general visceral afferent, which connects to the general visceral efferent. Got it? So you have four functional columns in the spinal cord. Now what will happen in the brain stem? There will be one more functional column. I mean, one pair rather, afferent and efferent. Two more columns will be included for the branchial apparatus. Embryology has been taught to you, and there are a lot of structures derived from the branchial arches, the pharyngeal arches, and the muscles derived from the pharyngeal arches are skeletal muscles. So the sensory inputs from these muscles are brought in through, now then this column is a special column, right? And special and visceral. We categorize them as special visceral afferents and special visceral efferent. The special visceral afferent will bring the sensory information from the structures derived from branchial arches, and special visceral efferent will innervate the muscles, the skeletal muscles derived from the branchial arches. Got it? So you have an additional two columns there for the structures derived from the branchial apparatus. Plus you have one more functional column, and that is special somatic afferent. Special somatic afferent is for the eighth cranial nerve, and vestibulocochlear or stetoacoustic nerve means hearing and balance. These two sensations are categorized as special somatic afferent. So in all you have 7 functional columns. The nuclei actually are arranged vertically along the length of the brain stem. That's why they are called as columns, right? However, they were divided or segregated into separate group of nuclei, which I'll tell you. But remember that there are 7 columns, functional columns in the brainstem, and in the spinal cord you have 4 functional columns. Having this in mind, we will now see further. First of all, now you'll see actually we are talking about cranial nerves, right? So we need to have an idea about the cranial nerves. First of all, how many cranial nerves are there? You know very well, it is taught in your primary schools that there are 12 pair of cranial nerves. Out of them, the first and second, the olfactory and the optic nerve, these two nerves, you can see, they arise from the forebrain. And forebrain is prosencephalon, and it is divided into telencephalon and diencephalon. So by the way, you are seeing here that these two nerves, this one is olfactory nerve, right? On the inferior surface of the frontal lobe. Then you have this optic nerve. Optic nerve from the two sides cross and form this optic chiasma, and then the optic nerves enter into these are optic tracts which crossed from optic chiasma. Then optic nerves enter into the orbits through the optic canal. So this one is an optic nerve, paired nerve, second nerve. So this and this, first and second, these two nerves arise from the forebrain. Then the rest of the nerves, out of 12, if first and second are arising from the forebrain, then remaining is 10 nerves. The remaining 10 cranial nerves, they arise from the brain stem. Clear? So the remaining, out of the remaining 10 cranial nerves, third and fourth now, actually we can see the numbering of the cranial nerves is from, cranial to caudal or rostral to caudal end. So the more, rostral is the nucleus, they are numbered accordingly. So as we move down in the brainstem, the numbers keep increasing, right? So the next nerve to arise is the third cranial nerve, and third cranial nerve is actually the, third and fourth, both of them arise from the midbrain. But from the upper portion of the midbrain at the level of superior colliculus, the nerve that will arise is oculomotor nerve. Okay. Then the fourth cranial nerve will also arise from the midbrain, but at the level of inferior colliculus. And the difference among these two will be that how they emerge on the surface of the brain, that the third cranial nerve will emerge ventrally on the brainstem medial to the two crus cerebri, or the medial to the two cerebral peduncles. This is the third cranial nerve, right? This one is the third cranial nerve, medial to the crus cerebri, or you can say is peduncles. Then lateral to the cerebral peduncles, you find the two nerves emerging out is trochlear nerve. If you remember, the cranial nerve having the longest intracranial course is said to be trochlear nerve. And the reason, remember, was this, that it was the only cranial nerve which emerges on the dorsum of the brain stem. Means trochlear nerves, when they arise from the trochlear nerve nucleus in the lower portion of the midbrain at the level of inferior colliculus, they wind within the CNS and they emerge out after decussating, or after they move out in opposite directions. So on the left side, the nerve which emerges will be coming from the right nucleus, and the right trochlear nerve on the side you're seeing is the right trochlear nerve will be emerging out from the, which is coming from the left trochlear nerve nucleus. Okay? So here the lower motor neurons, you can say, they innervate the muscles of opposite side. Okay, normally I told you that lower motor neurons, lower motor nerve palsy, we discussed in this spinal cord, that lower motor nerve palsy always is ipsilateral. But in trochlear nerve, what happens is that the if trochlear nerve nucleus on the right side is injured, there will be paralysis of lateral rectus of the opposite side. So this is a special case where you find that the paralysis will be, in case of lower motor nerve injury, the paralysis will be of the opposite side. So that was about trochlear nerve. These two nerves are rising from the midbrain. Then from the pons, 5, 6, 7, 8, these nerves will be arising from the pons. And among these, from the upper pons, it is the fifth or the largest cranial nerve. Fifth nerve is the largest cranial nerve. It emerges from the upper portion of the pons. So, and you know that fifth nerve also is the nerve supply. One of its components supplies the structures derived from the first branchial arch. So that means it also has a motor component. And remember, M for motor, M for medial. So motor nucleus of trigeminal nerve, the motor division of trigeminal nerve will be emerging medial to the sensory trunk of the trigeminal nerve. So together the two trunks of trigeminal nerve emerge from the basal or the ventral portion of the pons at its here. Then 6th, 7th and 8th, they are the nuclei you'll find in the lower portion of the pons, right? And the arrangement is medial to lateral. And even like, you know, the way of remembering is that medial is for motor Just I told you just now, I will remember. So abducent is a pure motor nerve. Okay. So the arrangement of 6th, 7th, 8th will be medial to lateral from the pontomedullary junction. This is the pontomedullary junction, right? So this is the upper portion of the pons. This is the spinal cord. You can see the spinal cord ascends up through the foramen magnum. Actually, it's the lower portion of the medulla oblongata which traverses the foramen magnum. So when it ascends up the medulla at its upper level, you find there are two anteromedial bulgings. These anteromedial bulgings are actually pyramids. This is called pyramids. And anterolateral bulgings, these are called the olives because of the inferior olivary nucleus in them. Okay. So, and these bulgings are because of the pyramidal tracts. So pyramids and then olives. So that forms the pontomedullary junction. So in the pontomedullary junction, the nerves that will arise will be 6th, 7th, and 8th, right? So 6th nerve arises medially, then you will have facial nerve, and then you will have the 8th cranial nerve, the statoacoustic or vestibulocochlear nerve. Take. But let me ask you that, you know, facial nerve also is a nerve for the second branchial arch. The structures derived, the muscles derived from the second branchial arch, they're all innervated by facial nerve. So it is primarily a motor nerve, but it also has a sensory component, right? It also brings, you know, sensations, general sensations from the pinna, the external auditory meatus. So it also has a sensory component, right? So this has its you know, apart from that, it also has visceral afferents also. So this nerve, the sensory component of facial nerve, will be lateral to the main trunk of the facial nerve, which is motor. And again, remember, M for motor, M for medial. So the main trunk of the facial nerve will be medial to its sensory component, which is called nervus intermedius. So nervus intermedius will be arising lateral to the motor trunk of the facial nerve, right? So motor and sensory roots of the facial nerve, right? So these are the nerves. And now remember the same pattern which I said, the nuclei spread from medial to lateral, motor to sensory. So the most laterally arising nerve from the brainstem will be 8th cranial nerve, okay? And that is vestibulocochlear nerve. And this comes into which functional column? Special somatic afferent. Okay? Hearing imbalance is categorized as special somatic afferent, which is the most lateral functional column. Then here the rest of the nerves remaining will be 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, right? 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Out of this, you know, then you look at the exterior of the medulla oblongata. In the median, you have a median longitudinal fissure, right? Sulcus. This will continue down as the median longitudinal fissure of the spinal cord, right? Then lateral to the pyramids, or you can say between pyramid and olives, this sulcus is called anterolateral sulcus. So anterolateral sulcus will provide origin to rootlets of hypoglossal nerve, the 12th cranial nerve, which will join to form the 12th cranial nerve from multiple rootlets. So the 12th cranial nerve arises from the anterolateral sulcus of medulla oblongata, upper portion. Here. Now you can ask, like, when we were numbering in an order that was from rostral to caudal, right? First, second, third, fourth, fifth, then sixth, seventh, eighth was medial to lateral. Then why not like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th? right? According to the numbering, which the order which we're following, hypoglossal should have gone lateral because numbering is like in an order. But you can see hypoglossal is medial. Then behind to this olives, there is another sulcus, and that is called posterolateral sulcus, which you also have in a spinal cord, right? And you know, in a spinal cord, from the anterolateral sulcus in a spinal cord, what arises is the ventral rootlets, which join to form the ventral root of the spinal nerves, efferents, right? Similarly, in a spinal cord, posterolateral sulcus, what is attached to the posterolateral sulcus of the spinal cord? It is the dorsal nerve rootlets, right, which join to form the dorsal nerve root of the spinal nerve. So that means the sensory nerves enter the spinal cord from posterolateral end, and the efferents, the motor roots, arise from anterolateral sulcus. So that the funda, the which dominates, instead of like in asking about why they are not in the same pattern, like in pontomedullary junction, the order was 6, 7, 8. So the order is, the dominant idea is that the motors will be medial, the sensories will be lateral. So stick to that. So out of these 4 nerves, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 12th is pure motor nerve. You know, it supplies 7 out of the 8 paired muscles in the tongue. So it's purely motor. So motor has to be M for motor, M for medial. So remember, hypoglossal hypoglossal nerve will arise from the anteromedial sulcus with multiple rootlets. Then from the posterolateral sulcus, above to below, it will be 9th, 10th, and 11th cranial nerves. So from the posterolateral sulcus, you can see it's glossopharyngeal that arises, then it's the vagus that arises, then it is the cranial portion of accessory nerve. And as I told you, there is a spinal nucleus of 11th cranial nerve in the upper cervical segments of the spinal cord. So the 11th cranial nerve has its rootlets emerging out from the spinal cord as well. So this spinal root of accessory will ascend up in the cranium and will join the cranial portion of accessory nerve, and that is called accessory nerve. Okay? So there, you know, you have this 9th, 10th, and 11th cranial nerve arise from the posterolateral sulcus, and 12th cranial nerve, the hypoglossal nerve, arises from the anteromedial sulcus, and anteromedial sulcus is for the efferents to emerge, the, you know, pure motor nerves to emerge out. They're more medially placed. So I hope you have this idea, you got it clear about the how 12 cranial nerves, how and from where do they emerge on the inferior aspect of the brain. Okay. So the longest cranial nerve is vagus. Remember, longest, it has a vague course. That's why it's named accordingly, vagus. It, you know, it reaches to the supply the thorax, viscera of the thorax, viscera of the abdomen, and even in the, you know, the structures derived from the foregut, structures derived from the midgut, right? And you know, transverse colon, right 2/3 up to the junction of right 2/3, left 1/3. That is the joint, you know, junction of midgut and hindgut. So you can see ki how long this vagus has its innervation. Then largest cranial nerve, you know, is trigeminal. Cranial nerve having a longest intracranial course is trochlear nerve. Very good. And which is the smallest cranial nerve? Remember, it is the first cranial nerve. Olfactory nerve is the smallest cranial nerve, right? And one more thing, one more question I used to ask is, which cranial nerve is more prone for stretching due to increased intracranial pressure? That is abducent. Good. Okay, Kirti, Akash, Shriya. You know, the nerve which is more prone for stretching will be abducent because it arises in the posterior cranial fossa, crosses the middle cranial fossa, and reaches into the orbit. So it is more prone for stretching during increased intracranial pressure and will cause medial squint, remember, because of paralysis of lateral rectus. So that was about the nerves, how they emerge from the inferior aspect of the brain. Now we will talk about how these functional columns are arranged, the nuclei of cranial nerves. Before that, just a summary here, you can see just a revision of the functional columns of the spinal cord. You know, this gray matter surrounds the central canal, which is a butterfly shaped thing. And this was having a functional group of nuclei in the dorsal column. So this functional column, the nuclei in the dorsal column, is categorized as general somatic afferent. All the exteroceptive and proprioceptive sensations being brought in from the soma or the structures derived from somites, right? So that is general somatic afferent. The efferents, like, it will make an arc. So efferent column for these sensations will be more anterior in the spinal cord, and that is general somatic efferent. General somatic efferent, the nerves which will emerge from here will supply the skeletal muscles in the anterior horn. So this is one functional, it's an arc. Impulses from somatic, supply from the soma, the body wall, the sensations will enter, will move out through the effector, will synapse or will stimulate the neurons in the anterior horn, and that functional column is called general somatic efferent, right? So these are two functional columns. Then the other two functional columns is for viscera. That's why we call it as visceral fibers. This one is an autonomic functional column, and it also has an efferent and afferents. So general visceral afferent, which will receive afferent sensations from the viscera, autonomic fibers. Then from the general visceral efferent, the autonomic fibers, the preganglionic fibers, may be sympathetic or may be parasympathetic. They will arise from general visceral efferent column. Because they arrange longitudinally along the length of the spinal cord, that is why we call it as functional columns. Okay? So general visceral efferent, general and general, general visceral afferent and efferent. The pattern is, look here. The pattern is, you can say ki efferents, you can see, are anteriorly placed and afferents are placed posteriorly in a spinal cord. But if you focus upon the development of nervous system or the CNS, it is derived from the neural tube, right? So in the neural tube, there are three layers. In the neural tube, there are three layers. The inner layer is the ependymal layer, right? The ependymal layer is made up of simple columnar ciliated brush border epithelium, which is specialized at certain portions in the ventricles to form choroid plexus and also secrete CSF. And then the middle layer is called the mantle layer. This mantle layer forms the gray matter of the CNS. Then the outer layer is the marginal layer which forms the white matter. Clear? Later on, what happens, there develops the sulcus. Actually, they, transversely in the mantle layer that develops this sulcus called the limiting sulcus bodhi sides. Take. and anterior are the fissures, anterior and posterior. This one is the limiting sulcus. So what happens because of this formation of sulcus, right? This mantle layer gets divided into two basal lamina, right, on either sides, and superiorly placed two LR lamina. So these are two LR lamina and these are two basal lamina. So in a spinal cord, the efferent nuclei, the efferent functional columns will be located, basically they develop in the basal lamina. And the afferent nuclei or the afferent functional columns, they will be located in the LR lamina, right? So this is a tube, right? Having, afferents in the LR lamina and efferent functional columns in the basal lamina. Efferents mean motor. Maybe sense, maybe, somatic or maybe visceral, but they are located in the basal lamina, and sensory nucleus or sensory functional column, they're located in the LR lamina. Now what happens is during the course of development, this neural tube has various flexions. So because of the large, most important flexure in the brainstem is the pontine flexure. We've seen the brain stems, there is anteriorly a bulge in the brain stem that is called the pons. The basal or the ventral surface of the pons is bulged anteriorly, and that bulging is because of the pontine flexure. So when you imagine if you are holding an aluminum tube, aluminum rod with a hollow rod, or you can say tube, aluminum tube, and you try to flex it, you bend it. So when you bend it, the side which is opposite to the flexure will be stretched, right? And the side which is towards the flexure will be indented, and the side which is opposite to the flexure will be stretched. So what happens because of the pontine flexure, if this is flexed ventrally, so all these lamina will come to lie on the basal aspect, on the ventral aspect, and superiorly it will be thinned out, right? So after the formation of this pontine flexure, what happens, basal lamina stays on the medial side and LR lamina comes to lie on the lateral side. Got it? Many of these topics is better to make you understand while teaching in person on the board, because we are connected through this PowerPoint presentation. So you'll have to understand what I'm trying to explain. If you flex this thing will be stretched. If you're flexing it downwards, the two base LR lamina will be spreaded out, and superiorly there will be a thin wall, and that forms the roof of the fourth ventricle. And the cavity here which will be stretched in the central canal, that will form the fourth ventricle. So in the floor, and this is happening at the level of pons, right? So this is the floor of the fourth ventricle formed by the pons. So pons as well as the upper portion of the medulla. Then here you will find that this gray matter which was being formed from the marginal layer, in them now basal lamina will come to lie medially and LR lamina will come to lie laterally. Now imagine if if we draw this section unilateral, one-sided diagram, we bring it here, right? This portion of the diagram, we bring it here. So what you find, it is the anterior median fissure. Then medially it will be the basal lamina, in which you will find is the motor functional columns, so the efferent functional columns. Laterally you'll find is LR lamina with afferents or the sensory functional columns, and this cavity is the fourth ventricle. And in the floor of this fourth ventricle, you will find the two lamina, basal and LR lamina, they are separated by sulcus limitans, and this forms the roof of the fourth ventricle. So now it is clear. Now this is happening. This pattern will be followed in the entire brain stem, right? So remember that the M for medial, M for motor, this will be, followed everywhere. So efferents are placed here and afferents laterally. Now, same thing in case of spinal cord, the pattern will be same. Remember, the somatic column will be placed peripherally. Like, the general somatic efferent, which was anterior most in the spinal cord, will be medial most here in the base of the brain stem. Right? So general somatic afferent will be medial most. And what was the afferent column for this to complete the arc will be this, right? General somatic afferent, and general somatic afferent is this, right? So general somatic afferent is making this arc, afferents coming here and efferents moving out from here. Then the medial mode, then in between this arc, there was this another functional column for autonomic impulses, and this was general visceral afferent, and which was making an arc with the general visceral efferents. So they will be placed in approximation on the either side of sulcus limitans. Remember this, right? The color coding is same as in this diagram. So this functional column will be placed on either side of the sulcus limitans. So you will find that this one is general visceral afferent, means all sort of sensations from the viscera are being brought in through this column, and this will form an arc with its efferent column, and that is general visceral efferent. Got it? So this arc is placed, the two functional, the autonomic functional columns are placed on either side of sulcus limitans, right? Now, in between this, ye wala arc that has been followed, the four functional columns, I have taught you about the same functional columns, how they are placed in the brainstem. Now, in between these two, you can imagine that another the two functional columns, which was not seen in the spinal cord, but will be present in the brainstem, that will be for the branchial apparatus, right? And that will be, because branchial is something special in head and neck region, right? So we'll call it as special, and because they're deep inside, so they are visceral. So although they are skeletal muscles, but they are deep inside, so we call it as special visceral column, special visceral afferent, special visceral efferent, and this functional column will be in between these two. This was the arc of somatic column, and this was the arc for autonomic column. Now, in between these two, you will find is an arc for the branchial apparatus. So, special visceral afferent will come here, and special visceral efferent will be placed in between these two efferents. Got it? So the arc here, that is additional functional column you will see here, is special visceral afferent column will be placed in between general visceral afferent and general somatic afferent. In between you will find is special visceral afferent, and its arc will be connected to this functional column, which will be lying between the two efferents present in the spinal cord. These two functional columns were there in the spinal cord. So in between, what will come here is special visceral efferent. So this arc is like this. Got it? Afferents coming through this functional column will stimulate the efferents of this functional column. Got it? So it's like, you can understand the better way is like a book, and this is the fold of the book. You can imagine these are the pages of the book, and this is the margin of the book, margin of the, the fold, the binding portion of the book. So if you close the book, you will find this functional column reaches close to this. This functional column will be close to this, and this functional column will overlap this, right? So it's like a book. Remember this way. I hope you're understanding. Okay. आकाश चौधरी, तुम्हें सिक्स्थ वेंट्रिकल कहां पे दिख रहा है? जस्ट टेल मी. This also is fourth ventricle. Here also I've mentioned as fourth ventricle. Where are you seeing the sixth ventricle? Kirti Singh cannot see. Fourth ventricle, fourth ventricle. Both the places I've written. B diagram. Okay. I understand. Okay, I understand you have found this out. At least I'm happy you were focusing on the slides. This has been wrongly written. Actually, it's a fourth ventricle written here also and here also. And this might have been a mistake by default. So make it corrected. This is fourth ventricle. Okay, good. I'm happy you are focusing and you're listening. So I hope you've understood this funda, how these functional columns are placed, make the sulcus limitans as the binding of the book. And these are the pages of the book on the two sides. And when you close the book, these functional column will overlap their reflex functional column. Afferents from general somatic afferent will overlap general somatic efferent. Then you have special visceral afferent, let's say this nearer to the binding of the book is the, I told you, autonomic fibers adjacent to the sulcus limitans. So general visceral afferents will overlap general visceral efferents, and in between two, this is a special functional column which is only in the brain stem, not in the spinal cord, and this one is special for the branchial apparatus. This will special visceral afferent will overlap the special visceral efferent, right? So this is how the functional columns are arranged. Make sure very well, because nowadays the questions are being asked with the help of diagrams. You have to label, or you have to, there's a pointer label, and you'll have to identify the structures. So that's why I'm taking time. So if you understand the concepts clear, maybe later on they might ask which nucleus is this or which functional column is this. So you'll have to have this idea. That's why I'm giving time to this. Okay, got it. Now what additional, I told you there were 7 functional columns in the brainstem. Now the additional one is also special, but that special thing is coming from the body wall. So that will be special somatic afferent, right? Special somatic afferent, not being developed from the branchial apparatus, right? If there have been developed from the branchial apparatus, then it will be categorized as special visceral afferent, but it develops from the body, right? So separate development uska. That's why we categorize it special somatic afferent, which will be the most lateral functional column in the LR lamina. This one, most lateral. And you don't have a direct efferent for this, remember? So this functional column doesn't have a direct, it will act through the, act through these general somatic efferents only. So there is no special somatic efferent, remember. So this one is unpaired. You have only special somatic afferents, not the efferents. And this functional column will be placed more laterally, only in the LR lamina. Got it? And that's why, remember, this functional column carries the sense of hearing and balance. And that's why I said this 8th cranial nerve nucleus will be placed most laterally in the brain stem. Okay, good. If you've understood now that, as I told you, because of pontine flexure, you're flexing a tube, so there will be flattening on the upper surface, and this margin will be having flexure on the lower portion. So all the lamina will come down on the inferior aspect, ventral side. But then it also depends ki the point of maximum flexure will be spreaded more. If you imagine a tube you are bending, right? So the point of flexure will be expanded more. But as you go proximal and distal to the flexure, you will find that this expanding of the dorsal surface will recede, and ultimately it will be a tube above and below, right? I would have demonstrated if we were in person in front each other, but here you'll understand, imagining it like if you're bending a tube, it will spread on one side. So the areas adjacent to the flexure, there the dorsal surface will be expanded. But as you move further proximal and further distal, that tube will again be a tube, right? So that means if you're moving caudally from the pons, we are reaching to the upper medulla, right? So that means this fourth ventricle will now shrink, or you can say become narrow, right? So this is the cut section of upper medulla. And in upper medulla, look here, in pons there is so widened fourth ventricle, but in the medulla it is narrowed out. This fourth ventricle is a diamond shaped ventricle. It's a diamond shaped ventricle. So being diamond, the maximum flexure, because of the maximum flexure at the lower pons, you find it's so widened here. But as you reach towards the upper medulla, the cavity recedes, it becomes narrow, and ultimately, if at the lower medulla, it will be a central canal which will continue as the central canal of spinal cord. So here you seeing is the fourth of the ventricle overlying the upper medulla. Now think about the same functional columns, how they are arranged in the upper medulla. And just now, before this, the previous slide, I told you about how the cranial nerves were emerging from the brain stem, right? So from the lower pons, there was 6th, 7th, 8th cranial nerves arising, okay? But since this diagram is from upper pons, right? So this will have nuclei of 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th cranial nerves. Got it? Because from the medulla, these are the lower 4 cranial nerves that emerge, right? And remember which nerve was arising from the anterolateral sulcus of the pons, from the medulla? It was hypoglossal, the 12th one, which will be medial according to the orientation of the functional columns. It's a general somatic efferent, 12th cranial nerve, right? So it will be more medial, one thing. So this is how now we'll talk about different nuclear arrangement in the upper medulla. The same 7 functional columns, you bring it here in the medulla, and imagine like the pattern will be the same, right? Now look here, the most medial functional column, as you know, is general somatic efferent. Clear? So this general somatic efferent, actually, they have described here with the help of medulla. They're trying to explain all the cranial nerve nuclei within this functional column. Instead of, although this is a diagram of upper medulla, but you imagine this way, that it's a cut section of a brain stem without any name. It's a brain stem including midbrain, pons, and medulla. So imagine this is a cut section of a midbrain, a cut section of a brain stem, which will include this functional column spreads. All these functional column are extending longitudinally in the entire length of the brain stem. So this general somatic efferent will extend rostrally up to the midbrain and will descend caudally down into the medulla, right? So this functional column will include cranial nerves, which are pure motor nerves, and these include 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 12th cranial nerves. Remember this. All these cranial nerve nuclei are categorized into heading of general somatic efferents, which are pure motor, and they're the most medially lying functional nuclei in the brain stem. They're close to the central canal or close to the ventricular cavity medially. So third, fourth, and sixth, they innervate the muscles of the eyeball for the movement of the eyeball, extraocular muscles. And the 12th innervates 7 out of 8 pairs of muscles of the tongue. So these are pure motor efferent. Then which was the functional column lateral to general somatic efferent was special visceral efferent, right? Special visceral efferent was to supply the muscles of skeletal muscles derived from branchial apparatus. That was the next column. So one more thing is you seeing is that this functional column has descended down, right? It has dipped down and settled deep in the white matter in surrounding the floor of the fourth ventricle. This functional column is special visceral efferent, and it has descended down, right? It dips deep into the white matter of the brain stem. So this functional column, these nuclei will be found embedded deep in the brain stem, and this functional column will include the efferents supplying the muscles of the pharyngeal arches. So I think it will be very easy for you to remember now. Can you tell me the nerve supply of first branchial arch is mandibular nerve, right? So you can imagine that there will be fibers for the fifth nerve, and which division will be the motor nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Remember, the motor nucleus of trigeminal nerve, which moves along with mandibular nerve. So that motor fibers of trigeminal nerve will emerge from here. Got it? Second branchial arch is facial nerve. So this functional column will also provide fibers to the motor division of facial nerve. Third branchial arch, glossopharyngeal. You will find glossopharyngeal, the motor fibers reaching to glossopharyngeal also through this functional column. Then fourth and sixth is by craniovagocranial accessory complex. Okay? So with the help of cranial portion of the accessory and vagus, together they supply the fourth and sixth branchial arches, right? Fourth by the superior laryngeal nerve, and the sixth by recurrent laryngeal nerve, right? These are the nerve, very good. So these are the nerve of the arches. So, and that actually is these nerves, like they are formed by the vago-accessory complex, means the cranial portion of the accessory nerve and vagus together blend to supply the fourth and sixth arches. So what cranial, this nucleus along its length will provide fibers to these nerves, fifth, seventh, ninth, 10th, 11th. Got it? So this is the functional column which will include these nuclei. Now, according to this same pattern, the next nuclear column, this functional column, will be general visceral efferents, right? General visceral efferents will be to supply the smooth muscles and cardiac muscles. Means it's an autonomic efferent tract to supply the smooth muscles and the cardiac muscle. तो smooth muscles में क्या आ जाएगा? Glands, salivary glands आ जाएंगे, sweat glands आ जाएंगे, tunica media of blood vessels आ जाएंगी, vasoconstriction, vasodilatation हो जाएगा, erector pili, like goose flesh formation, that will also be that's autonomic response, right? Then you have GIT, right? Muscularly, peristaltic waves like respiration, then heartbeats, contraction of the muscles of the heart, all things, bladder, micturition, defecation, all these voluntary smooth muscle action and cardiac muscle action will be controlled by which functional column? General visceral efferent. Clear? Which was adjacent or medial to the sulcus limitans. So the next functional column is this. And imagine like what will be the cranial nerves it will be supplying. This functional column, general visceral efferent, will supply. Remember, you know that you don't have a sympathetic outflow in the cranial nerves. It's very clear that sympathetic outflow is thoracolumbar outflow, T1 to L2, right? So you will not find sympathetic outflow from the cranial nerves. Rather, the sympathetic outflow enters the cranium through the sympathetic plexus, around internal carotid, around middle meningeal, around vertebral arteries, right? So that's how sympathetic was ascending up from the sympathetic chain. But because parasympathetic outflow is craniosacral, you know very well, craniosacral, sacral, S2 S3 S4, right? Pelvic splanchnic nerve बनती हैं. But the parasympathetic cranial outflow, यानी कि all the neurons emerging from this nucleus, right, they will be preganglionic parasympathetic neurons. Make it very clear. Okay, this is homologous to the lateral horn of S2, S3, S4. Is it clear now? Is it this functional column is homologous to the lateral horn of S2, S3, S4 spinal segments. So this will also provide the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, right? So general visceral efferents will emerge out, and the purpose of this functional autonomic functional column is to provide smooth muscles and cardiac muscles, अब ये स्मूथ मसल्स करते क्या हैं? ग्लैंडुलर सिक्रीशंस कराते हैं, सलाइवरी, पैरोटिड, सबमैंडिबुलर, लैक्राइमल ग्लैंड्स, राइट, इनका सिक्रीशन कराएंगे. और कहाँ स्मूथ मसल्स? आइरिस में, सीलियरी बॉडी में, यानी मियोसिस कराएंगे, राइट, और अकोमोडेशन रिफ्लेक्स ऑफ द आइलेंस थ्रू दिस सीलियरी मसल्स, वहां पे भी स्मूथ मसल्स हैं, उनको इनरवेट करेंगे. देन फेरिंग्स, लैरिंग्स, ये जो मसल्स हैं स्मूथ, यहाँ पे जो इसमें मसल्स हैं, सॉरी, smooth muscles, the GIT, right, as well as the lungs, right, and the sphincters, pyloric sphincter, remember, all is cardioesophageal sphincter. So all these is the smooth muscles and the cardiac muscles, they'll all be innervated by which functional column? By this functional column called general visceral efferent. Clear? So now think about I told you there are 4 parasympathetic ganglion, right, associated with the cranial nerves, and there are many more parasympathetic ganglion associated with vagus, but that will be within or close to the viscera. So the 4 named parasympathetic ganglion, is otic, submandibular, pterygopalatine, and submandibular, otic, pterygopalatine, and ciliary ganglion. You have 4 parasympathetic ganglion. Now look here, this is an autonomic efferent pathway to the smooth and cardiac muscles called general visceral efferent. So it will provide parasympathetic fibers to the 3rd cranial nerve, and this will be subdivided into different group of nuclei. Like it will divided into Edinger-Westphal nucleus, superior salivatory nucleus, inferior salivatory nucleus, right? Then ye dorsal nucleus of vagus. So this, through its different nuclei, like Edinger-Westphal nucleus will provide parasympathetic secretomotor fibers passing through the 8th cranial nerve, which will relay in the ciliary ganglion, and which will innervate the which muscle? Constrictor pupillae and the ciliaris muscle. Smooth muscles के लिए हो गया. Then through the facial nerve, it also is sending parasympathetic secretomotor fibers through the facial nerve. Now facial nerve will give 2 such branches. One for the lacrimal gland, that will be coming from the lacrimatory nucleus, preganglionic fibers, and through the pterygopalatine ganglion, which will relay in the pterygopalatine ganglion through the greater petrosal nerve, it will relay in the pterygopalatine ganglion, and the postganglionic fibers will supply the lacrimal gland. It will also cause secretions from the orbit, from the nose, from the pharynx, from the palate, right? So that is one branch, that's greater petrosal nerve, from the facial nerve, carrying fibers from this nucleus, superior salivatory nucleus, lacrimatory nucleus. Also from the superior salivatory nucleus, the fibers will pass out through which nerve? Chorda tympani. Remember, chorda tympani will also branch, the second branch from the facial nerve. Sorry, the third intracranial branch. Second is nerve to stapedius. Third intracranial branch from the facial nerve is chorda tympani. So this also carry parasympathetic secretomotor fibers, and this will relay in the submandibular ganglion and will provide parasympathetic postganglionic fibers to the submandibular, sublingual, and other glands in the oral cavity, mucosal glands, anterior lingual glands and all. ठीक? So that was, yani ki there are two parasympathetic nuclei associated with facial nerve, that is pterygopalatine and submandibular ganglion. Now it will also send secretomotor fibers through the ninth cranial nerve, and those fibers are preganglionic parasympathetic fibers through glossopharyngeal nerve. Then is a branch of glossopharyngeal nerve called tympanic nerve, which will enter the middle ear and form a tympanic plexus, and from the tympanic plexus there will be a nerve called lesser petrosal nerve. Now this lesser petrosal nerve will relay in the otic ganglion. So this is all the preganglionic fiber course, which after in the otic ganglion, then the postganglionic fibers through auriculotemporal nerve will innervate the smooth muscles in the parotid gland. And what are the smooth muscles in the gland? Is the myoepithelial cells. You know, you have been told about the histology of these glands. Each acini, these acini are surrounded by myoepithelial cells. These are smooth muscles in the glands. So they constrict the glands and provide secretions. So this is how, yani ki, ninth cranial nerve is associated with otic ganglion. Then 10th and 11th, again, this is the cranio-vago accessory complex, right? Vago accessory complex hai ye. So this will innervate, like, you know, facial nerve ke saath jo, you know, the dorsal nucleus of vagus hai, those preganglionic fibers will run along with the vagus nerve. And vagus nerve, you know, supply it the mucosal glands in the oral cavity, in the pharynx, in the larynx, in esophagus, in trachea, in bronchi, then in the GIT, stomach, duodenum, ileum, jejunum, colon, right, and small intestine, everything, like, structures derived from even the, liver, pancreas, right, kidney. So in short, ये सारा जितना विसरा है abdomen का, except trans hind gut के छोड़ करके structures. So this vagus innervates the structures, viscera of the thorax, abdomen, neck region, right? So the preganglionic fibers from the dorsal nucleus of vagus, they run along with the vagus. Now look here, the postganglion, like you have to have these relay centers, the ganglion. You had like 4 named ganglions in the hidden region, and those were associated with the 3rd, 7th, and 9th cranial nerve. And 10th वाले में किससे था associated? 10th will be associated with the 10th will be the ganglion of the parasympathetic fibers running with along with the vagus. The parasympathetic ganglia will be located either within the viscera it supplies or just very close to the viscera. So that's why I've been telling that the postganglionic parasympathetic fibers are very small. So anyways, you've got to know about this tract also, this functional column also. Now the remaining will be the 4 functional columns, which are afferent columns, which develop in the alar lamina and will be placed laterally to the efferent functional columns. And among these, now look here, these are the afferent functional columns, which will be the most medial, which will be closer to the binding of the book or closer to the alar lamina. And it is an autonomic functional column, which is bringing impulses from the viscera. And this functional column is called general visceral afferent. General visceral afferent, general sensations from, this will bring fibers from along with the facial nerve, right? Facial nerve se aayenge general visceral afferents, then from the glossopharyngeal region, then from the glossopharyngeal nerve, and from the 10th nerve. So this will bring all sort of stretch, like different sensations you to receive. General visceral afferent sensations, these might be stretch, temperature, pressure from the viscera in the head and neck region. So carotid body, carotid sinus, right? Then sensations, general sensations from the larynx, pharynx, and all, palate. All general sensations will be brought in through this functional column. And can you see they have a nucleus outside the CNS? And that is, because the first order sensory neurons are pseudo unipolar neurons. So all these fibers which are carrying the first order sensations will have the cytons lying outside the CNS. Okay. Then the other functional column, which will be lateral to this, this was in special for the branchial apparatus, right? So this special functional column is special visceral afferent. So special visceral afferent will bring sensations from those structures which are derived from the branchial apparatus, right? And special visceral afferents will come through, look here, through the 7th and 9th and 10th cranial nerves. And what is the special sensation being brought from the structures derived from the from this branchial apparatus? These special sensations is actually here we are focusing upon is the gustatory sensation. It's a special visceral afferent sensation. So if you're talking about the gustatory sensation, think about the tongue, the nerve supply, the special taste sensations of the nerve of the tongue. So the taste sensation from the anterior two-thirds of the tongue, except the circumvallate papillae, and also taste sensations from the hard palate will be brought in through this facial nerve. ठीक? Then 9th nerve, chorda tympani, याद आ गया? फेशियल नर्व की ब्रांच थी ना एंटीरियर टू-थर्ड ऑफ द टंग की. तो फेशियल नर्व के थ्रू गस्टेटरी सेंसेशंस आ रहे हैं. दैट आल्सो take sensations from the palate also. Taste sensations are also there in the palate. वो फेशियल नर्व के थ्रू आ रहे हैं, chorda tympani के थ्रू. Then posterior one of the tongue, taste sensations are being carried by glossopharyngeal as well as including the circumvallate papillae. So taste sensations from the posterior one of the tongue and circumvallate papillae will be carried through 9th cranial nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve. And these sensations will reach here into this special visceral afferent nucleus. And then you have, posterior most portion of the tongue, right? Posterior most of the portion of the tongue as well as from the epiglottis. The taste sensations are also received from the epiglottis also. The epiglottis and posterior most portion of the tongue, the taste sensation is being carried by vagus. So all this reach to this functional column. Now remember, let me tell you that you can see here that these two functional columns have merged, right? They have fused. So general visceral afferent and special visceral afferent, they have fused together to form a common functional column, right? And this is the nucleus tractus solitarius. ठीक है? This function is called nucleus tractus solitarius. And by the way, to forget to tell you the name of this nucleus, who can tell me this nucleus which was dipping down and this was supplying the muscles derived from the branchial apparatus? This is the special visceral efferent nucleus, and this nucleus is called nucleus ambiguus, right? So this is nucleus ambiguus. We'll abhi we'll discuss further in detail, maybe not today but next lecture. So I hope you've understood about these sensations from the tongue, from the palate, and from the epiglottis. They are reaching up to nucleus tractus solitarius. Nucleus ambiguus, I just told you, this functional column, right? This functional column is which was providing innervation to the muscles derived from the pharyngeal arches, right? First arch, mandibular nerve, second facial nerve, third glossopharyngeal, and fourth and sixth by vago accessory complex. So all these muscles are innervated by this nucleus. This is called nucleus ambiguus. Clear? This functional column which dips down in the white matter, this is nucleus ambiguus. Okay. Then another nucleus which was laterally is general somatic afferent. General somatic afferent, you can see this also is dipping down. And by the way, whenever these neurons they move, they have this property of amoeboid. During the course of development, let me tell you, they have this property of amoeboid movement, right? So when these move from their position, that movement is called neurobiotaxis. Similarly, I'll tell you how this facial nerve nucleus moves in close proximity to the trigeminal, crossing the abducent nerve nucleus. That also is called neurobiotaxis. So here also you're seeing that these nucleus should have been arranged like this, linear arrangement on the floor of the fourth ventricle, but this and this, the two nuclei have dipped down into the white matter and embedded deep inside. So this movement of settling down of these functional column deep inside is neurobiotaxis. Now, this functional column is general somatic afferent. General somatic afferent, you have been taught about very clearly, means soma is the body wall, like head and neck region, mein, especially from the head region, because neck region is covered by the cervical nerves. So, focusing on the cranial nerves. So, the entire face, touch, temperature, pressure, vibration, 2-point discrimination, tactile localization, all sort of sensations means exteroceptive and proprioceptive from the body wall. Those sensations are called general somatic afferent, right? This, remember, this functional column was also present in the spinal cord. So this is the same, all sensations which were being received in lamina 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Lamina 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sensations they were receiving was exteroceptive sensations, pain, temperature, pressure, vibration, then proprioceptive sensations like, 2-point discrimination and, strong noses and vibration, and then unconscious proprioceptive sensations from Golgi tendon, muscle spindle in the Clarke's column. So all this nucleus is called general somatic afferent. So this is the same nucleus here. And कि इसमें जनरल सोमैटिक एफरेंट में जो सेंसेशंस आ रहे हैं वो प्राइमरली इज बाय ट्राइजेमिनल. पूरी सेंसरी सप्लाई ऑफ द फेस पढ़ाई जा चुकी है तुम्हें. Entire face by V1, V2, V3 divisions, it receives sensations from the face except at the angle of mandible and the ear lobule, and that is by the cervical nerve, that is greater auricular nerve, right? And even from the sensations from the scalp up till the vertex, right? And even sensations from the paranasal sinuses, oral cavity, orbit, right? Pharynx, larynx, tonsil, palate, right? So ये जो sensation है यहाँ पे जो बात हो रही general somatic afferent. So these sensations are brought in to this functional column, and this functional column, let me tell you, is made up of single nucleus, which is an elongated nucleus which has in three parts. The uppermost part is in midbrain called mesencephalic nucleus, right? Then in the pons it has a main nucleus of trigeminal, or the upper sensory nucleus of the trigeminal. Then it extends down as inferior nucleus or the spinal nucleus of trigeminal. This nucleus descends down, remember, in the upper two cervical segments of the spinal cord. So this is this entire column is made up of three nucleus. All of them are named according to the trigeminal: mesencephalic, then you have main sensory nucleus, then you have spinal nucleus of trigeminal. Okay, so and it means sensations from the afferent from the face will be brought in here, but there are sensations from the facial nerve also. Like facial nerve, remember I told you, is also bringing sensations from some part of the pinna, including the external auditory meatus, as well as from the vagus also. Vagus also receives, you have an auricular branch of vagus which receives, remember मैंने बताया था लोगों को heavy diet लेने के लिए you can place a alcohol bud, cotton bud dipped in alcohol in your external auditory meatus, that stimulates vagus and will cause gastric emptying, so you'll have more of desire to eat food, right? So वहां से याद रहना ये बात हमने बताई थी, that your pinna, your external auditory meatus, has also innervation, you have sensory supply from facial nerve as well as from vagus. So this this functional column will receive afferents from 5th, 7th and 10th, and also from the 9th. 9th is glossopharyngeal, right? So glossopharyngeal also receives general sensations from this tonsil, right? Tonsil is in the oral cavity, palate, soft palate and all. So you have general sensations received here. And the last of all, the most laterally lying is special nucleus, special functional column, which will be not seen in the spinal cord. And this lateral most functional column is special somatic afferent. And special somatic afferent means special sensations हैं, कौन से हैं? Vestibular हैं and auditory हैं. The two impulses, both are being carried from the internal ear. And can you tell me the receptor for kinetic balance and static balance? From the semicircular canals, right? It is the crista. And from utricle and saccule, it is the macula. The crista and macula, they are the sensory receptors found for balancing. Clear? So from the vestibular portion of the internal ear, that includes utricle, saccule and semicircular canals, and the receptors are macula and crista. From there, these vestibular sensations are brought in through the 8th cranial nerve into this special nucleus. And let me tell you that this functional column has 4 nuclei for vestibular fibers. You have an upper vestibular nucleus, lower one is called the spinal vestibular nucleus, and medial and lateral vestibular nucleus. So there are 4 vestibular nuclei here, right? Then you have the cochlear. Like cochlear में जो sensations आएंगे for auditory sensations from the cochlea will be perceived here in the cochlear nucleus. Now this functional column has 6 nuclei, 2 cochlear nerve nuclei and 4 vestibular nerve nuclei. Now out of these, which will be more lateral, vestibular or cochlear? Remember that the cochlear nerve nucleus is most laterally placed in the brain stem, and cochlear nerve nucleus surround upper and lower portion of the inferior cerebellar peduncles. So this is the most lateral nucleus, and cochlear nerve nucleus will be upper and lower cochlear nerve nucleus because that are two in number. Okay, upper and lower cochlear nerve nucleus. So hearing impulses are received there in the cochlear nerve. This is the special somatic afferent function column. So that was all about the functional columns and how the sensations, different types of sensations from head region, they enter the brainstem, and from after forming a reflex, the efferents will emerge out from these three functional columns, and from them the cranial nerves, the 12 cranial nerves will emerge out from the ventral aspect of the brainstem. Only the fourth one it emerges, although it finally appears on the ventral aspect of the midbrain, lateral to the cerebral peduncles. Now this, if you also have to have this habit of identifying the sections, because even in your professional exams and in your MCQ exams, entrance exams, they're giving these images. So if they have this image, given such image, right, can you tell me this image is from upper pons, middle pons, or lower pons? I told you the identifying features. In upper pons, you have upper medulla. This section is from upper medulla, middle medulla, or lower medulla. How to identify? The identifying feature for upper medulla will be two things. One thing, it will also forming the floor of fourth ventricle, upper medulla. The other thing, the anterior bulgings, remember? These bulgings were forming the olives. So they have a purse-shaped, a corrugated purse-shaped nucleus, the inferior olivary nucleus. So these bulgings are olives, right? So inferior olivary nucleus is present in upper part of the medulla. If in case it was a midsection, then in the midsection what you'll find, remember, koi bata de hame, how will you, if it's a transverse section of mid of medulla, what will be the identifying feature to call it as a midsection of medulla? I have taught you. To identify that a section of midsection of medulla, you will find in the middle of medulla, you will find is sensory decussation. पढ़ाया था. Dorsal, very good. Dorsal column decussation. The internal arcuate fibers, the second order neurons from the dorsal, यहाँ पे जो nucleus gracchalis, nucleus cuneatus होता है, उससे जो second order neurons होते हैं, they wind anterior to the central canal, right? So that's called the internal arcuate tract or internal arcuate fibers. So sensory decussation is found in the middle of medulla, and in the lower portion of medulla, what you will find is pyramidal decussation. Got it? Good. So I think it will be enough for today, and we'll be continuing this topic on Monday now. So I'm ending it here.